M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin has now released in theatres, and it's quite the interesting adaptation of Paul Tremblay's The Cabin at the End of the World. There's a big difference to the ending of the film, and it's something that Shyamalan clearly has his own answer to surrounding the source material. In this explained analysis, I'm going to be giving you my breakdown of Knock at the Cabin, discussing the plot, the ending twist, and the differences from the book. There will be spoilers in this video, so if you haven't watched M. Night Shyamalan's new film yet, then I would recommend checking it out before watching my analysis. Before I get into it though, if you want to see more breakdowns on upcoming films, TV shows, and auteur-driven work, then don't forget to support this upload by giving it a like rating, subscribing to the channel, and turning on your notifications. But without further ado, let's dive into my explained video for Knock at the Cabin. So M. Night Shyamalan has had some big hits and also some not so great films in his extended career, but he's always managed to grip audiences with interesting setups, emotionally wounded characters, and of course, the final crazy twists. His new film Knock at the Cabin has been adapted from Paul Tremblay's horror novel The Cabin at the End of the World, and involves the wild events that take place after a group of strangers interrupt a family's holiday and present them with an urgent decision to be made. They must sacrifice and kill one of their own to prevent the apocalypse from happening. With Shyamalan being known for shattering audience expectations in the final acts of his films, this one has a twist that is more natural towards how he answers certain topics from the book. But before we get to that, let's discuss a bit more about the setup of his latest movie, which we learn takes a traditional home invasion thriller and turns it into an apocalyptic reasoning. So husbands Eric and Andrew are with their adoptive daughter Wen in a remote cabin in New Hampshire, having left the city behind for a well-deserved break. It's quite the heavenly location, full of fields with lots of greenery, a lake for diving in, and a cabin where they can put their minds at ease. We open the film with Wen, who is outside trying to catch grasshoppers, and she is awkwardly interrupted by Dave Bautista's Leonard, who in M. Night's past film Split may have been there to abduct her. But this seems to be quite different, because Leonard tries to make friends with her and essentially tells her that he wants to speak to her dads about the important decision that her and they will have to make. Before things can go smoothly though, Wen spots the group of people that Leonard has brought with him, that while we learn are mostly polite, are also armed with terrifying weapons too. She decides to run inside and let her dads know about what is coming, and Eric and Andrew eventually get that dreaded knock at the cabin. In realizing that they are armed, they panic and try to call the police, but they can't do that or even make a run for it because the phone line has been severed, there's no signal in the area, and the tires of their car have been slashed. The strangers do end up breaking into the cabin, and the family are soon tied up by the four of them, and this is where the film starts to turn from horrifying into being more of an existential one. The visitors, which include Dave Bautista's Leonard, Rupert Grint's Desmond, Sabrina and Adrienne, reveal themselves as being apocalyptic messengers with an important message for the family, and that is that the world will end with the ocean swelling, plagues taking over, and the sky falling like planes of glass. But they also say that it can be prevented if Eric, Andrew, or their adopted daughter Wen choose to sacrifice one of their own. The apocalyptic messengers bring the urgency that the film needs, and it's through them that the scale of the plot really starts to unveil. They introduce themselves to the family with Sabrina claiming to be a nurse, Leonard claiming to be a teacher, and Adrienne being a single mum that's trying to protect her son, laying down their surprisingly ordinary lives. It's only Redmond's appearance and the mention of a troubled history that makes them question, as Andrew thinks that he is the same redneck that once attacked him in a bar for being gay, a moment that left him scarred and also quite against doing this to save others. So Eric and Andrew look at these strangers and ask whether they are extremists, mentally unstable, or a group of people that actually know something about the end of the world and want them to help save it. In the lives that this couple have lived, which includes flashbacks such as the one where Andrew's parents meet Eric, it makes it clear to us of the homosexual anxieties involved and why resistance is their predicted action. But while Eric suffered a severe head injury during that initial break-in, him and his partner show the urge to not give in until one of them eventually becomes persuaded. And this all starts to transpire when the strangers begin to kill themselves off one by one, with each death putting in motion a certain apocalyptic event. We learn that these deaths are essentially slowing down the apocalypse so that Eric and Andrew have time and might be convinced to sacrifice one of their own to stop the whole thing. First is Rupert Grint's Redmond, and we follow that death by watching TV footage of a tidal wave killing many people on the coast. Next is Adrienne, followed by the news footage of a bird flu rapidly killing people on the planet too. But even with half of the strangers already being sacrificed and 2 apocalypses taking place as a result, Eric and Andrew continue to stall on making their decision. While Eric does start to buy into their theories as the film goes on, Andrew is still adamant that everything is a hoax. And this is only escalated after he thinks that Redmond was the man that assaulted him in the past. He says to Leonard that the rest of the world can die because they haven't done any good for him, showing how the pain of his past experiences have inflicted a deep-rooted trauma. Regardless of these understandable reservations, ones that even Leonard and the messengers can understand, as things progress it becomes increasingly clear that the apocalyptic events are really happening. Andrew and Eric are eventually secretly untied by Wen, with Andrew able to get the gun out of his now slashed car, and he eventually uses it on Sabrina. Planes start to drop from the sky on the news, and this is then later seen around their cabin once they begin to confront Leonard. And in the final act where Leonard eventually kills himself, before he does so, he tells Eric and Andrew that they have one last chance to prevent the apocalypse, and after he dies, there will only be a few minutes before their time is up. While Eric and Andrew are still not convinced, Leonard kills himself, and this causes the sky to go black and lightning to strike all around them. So they are once again left with a now final chance to make a very important decision. Before we come to that final decision, it's key to note that these events play out quite differently in the movie than how they do in the book. Yes, much of the story plays out as it does in the original material, but the final act is reworked in an explorative way, as if Shyamalan gives his version and answer to the more supernatural occurrences. In the source material, the ending events result in a cautionary statement about the struggle of protecting your children from a quite bleak future. When Andrew escapes to fetch his gun, his and Eric's adoptive daughter Wen is accidentally shot and killed. But we learn that her death doesn't count in saving the world, as the act was a mistake and not done by choice. Eric and Andrew eventually beat their strangers, and it ends with them together, with a sacrifice not successfully being made. That death also affects Sabrina, who kills Leonard before leading the couple to Redmond's car. She reminds them that they can still prevent the apocalypse if they choose to, and then she eventually kills herself. In the book, Eric does consider following through, but Andrew persuades him not to, saying that they shouldn't obey a god that doesn't accept Wen's death as a sacrifice. So the couple head to Redmond's car and leave united. So with the source material's ending, there's more ambiguity surrounding the apocalypse, and it eventually leaves readers with a decision to be made over whether the messengers were telling the truth. Whereas in the film, the apocalypse is clearly a thing, the messengers were telling the truth, and one of the two partners does reach a heartbreaking end. Coming to the movie's end, instead of being accidentally shot, Wen survives the final scuffle, and instead, Eric decides that he wants to be the sacrifice after watching society's collapse. As expected, Andrew begs him to consider that the strangers played pre-recorded broadcasts on the TV, but Eric confesses that he was convinced way earlier after witnessing their ordinary behaviour to begin with. And then when he also sees that the apocalypse was real and it eventually reaches their backyard, there's only one end in his mind. After some time, Andrew agrees to his wish, shoots him, and realizes that there can only be a future if he stops the apocalypse by having a future with his adoptive daughter. Andrew and Wen reach Redmond's car and drive back towards a wrecked city in the distance, but first they stop at a diner and see that the people in there are crowded around a TV that's showing images of the destruction from the events that took place. It's clear that the apocalypse has been prevented and it's time for civilization to basically repair in the future. And speaking of that future, the final scene between Andrew and Wen suggests a brighter period in the time ahead for them both too. We did see a flash forward of them during Eric's final plea for death, and they appeared to be happy, with Wen moving on in her life and settling down in a new home. She's with Andrew and he is equally happy towards this big step forward for her in the future. So it's quite a wholesome ending, and to top it off, the final moments of the film show them driving away from the diner, listening to Boogie Shoes by Casey and the Sunshine Band, which is the track that they and Eric listened to joyfully on the way to the cabin. It's definitely a more conclusive ending than the one that was in the book, because rather than showing us a couple regrettably heading back into a likely chaotic world, the movie shows a parent and a daughter having a potential bright future ahead. One thing to keep in mind though is that M. Night's film does show that the world is permanently scarred, whether that be because of the many deaths around the world or because of the death that our remaining characters will have to live with. It's not a Shyamalan twist that will cause movie debates, but a twist on the source material that provides his answer to those unanswered questions in a different way. Like I touched on though, it gave us something that was still quite devastating because it used the themes of the book to showcase another distressing conclusion. But that was my breakdown and analysis for M. Night Shyamalan's Knock at the Cabin. Overall, I quite liked the director's new film, and while I wouldn't say it was his best work by any margin, I did once again appreciate how Shyamalan could take a very closed-in environment with limited characters and breathe a sense of scale into it with the storytelling. Yes, he has done that on numerous occasions in past films, and the book had a lot of this material for him to use, but from a filmmaking side of things, the director has a good habit of taking something that appears quite small and conveying the stakes in an urgent way. I also liked the way he used close-up cinematography, particularly with Dave Bautista, to really show the inner anxieties in making this group of innocent people do something unimaginable. I especially loved the camera work in the scene that involved the killing of Redmond, with Shyamalan tilting the camera as Leonard lifts his tool to make you feel just as sick and dizzy as those in the room. It's definitely a psychological and emotionally sickening film at times, but I cannot deny that the filmmaker continuously finds a way to bring the story's central themes to life by putting you in the shoes of these characters. On the other hand, I can completely understand if readers of the book are a bit disappointed by elements such as the ending changes, and I myself did find the conclusion to be quite standard considering the questions that were posed in the build-up. But I guess that the ending did still supply the harrow in its answers that this story had on the pages too. While it's not the most memorable of endings and I expected more from it, I still appreciate Shyamalan's filmmaking and the way he takes what appears to be small and makes it more important. I think that's a great tool to have in Hollywood, and with Knock at the Cabin also having good performances, decent writing and well shot scenes, it at least makes it a worthy theatrical experience. I'm giving Knock at the Cabin a rating of 7.5 out of 10. But to those who have seen M. Night's latest film, what are your thoughts on all the events that went down? And if you have read the book, how do you feel towards the changes that were made? Let me know down below in the comment section. For more videos on upcoming film and TV releases, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating and follow me on social media via the links in the description. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.